of meetings this afternoon, so I just will go through it very quickly. We're going to start with a CRA budget workshop. And then once that's complete, we will have a city budget workshop. Once that is complete, then we will have a CRA board meeting, as this commission is also the CRA board, and then we will go into our regularly scheduled commission meeting. So that's sort of the agenda for what will be happening. And so we will begin, this is draft CRA projects in an original budget, and we have Ben Johnke is going to give this presentation for us. The format that I would like to follow in this meeting is I would like to allow Ben to go completely through his presentation without interruption so he can keep his train of thought as he presents this to us. And then I'll ask for questions from the board. At that point, it can become very informal and we can discuss and go back and forth. And then once the board has completed what questions they have, then I will be happy to open that to the public, and the public can also ask questions at that time. Okay, so those are the ground rules for this workshop. Take it away, Mr. Janke.
Prepared a CRA budget. Is this one?
Oh, the copier.
1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. I prepared a budget for the upcoming fiscal year for the CRA with the help of the CRA Advisory Board. If you take a look at this budget page, which outlines the anticipated expenditures or anticipated funds for every single account. Overall budget would be $504,840.
That's page 72 in the budget, everyone.
Should be the last page. And actually, I do want to highlight 2, maybe 3 items on this agenda. Obviously, on anticipated revenues, you'll see that we're expecting a drop in the tax increment financing of about 19%. Obviously, this is due to Hurricane Michael, so this is really the impact that we're seeing right now because of the residences that were or homes that were destroyed during the storm. So that's the impact right here. The projects that have been discussed at the CRA with the CRA Advisory Board are really affecting 3 accounts under the expenditure component, and that's professional services, supplies operating, and then design and construction assistance. So those are the big ticket items, basically. $25,000 professional services, $215,000 for supplies operating, and then $115,000 for design and construction assistance. So if you take a look at this project list, this page, you will actually see the breakdown of these 3 accounts, because this is just a summary. And this is a list actually of projects that was discussed at the last advisory board meeting, and they voted to suggest or recommend these projects to be implemented during the next fiscal year by the CRA director, and to ask for funding. Then one item that was on the bottom of this list that was added by, as per the mayor's request, to add some funding for the restoration support of historic structures in the CRA. And that's pretty much in a nutshell. And Mayor, if you may want to elaborate on this last item and kind of.
Sure, I would be happy to do that, Ben. Thank you. I was in attendance at one of the, it was not actually a formal CRA advisory meeting because you did not have a quorum, but I did mention this to those who were there. And what I mentioned was the fact that the Helen McMullen Library, which is the first structure that was a library in the city of Lynn Haven, was very lovingly restored. And the city did have some expense involved when the library was moved over into the Monument Park. And all of the work done on the library was done by volunteers. And not to take any credit for any of that because I didn't do any physical work, but I did sing a concert and give money to that for air conditioning for a few $1,000s there. So I do have some vested interest in that library. I love it. And I watched them polish every doorknob and sand those floors. And as most of you know, I believe it was 2 large pine trees went through the center of that and just chopped it in half. And so the city does, I believe that preserving those things that are precious to all of us here in Lynn Haven, our history, our culture is very important. And I think that at some point we actually may be able, it's not a promise, it's not a given, but we might be able to find that we're reimbursed some money through FEMA and through Florida's Historical Association and through the National Historic Register possibly for some of these buildings. Those are possibilities, not certainties. But I think that $30,000 could be well spent, and it would put that library back. I know Ducky Johnson is the company that everybody uses to move the old structures. It's an expert company, and we've been told he could pull that back together and put that, they could get the roof on it, and then they could get back in there and get back on track. So I think it would be well spent, and that's just my opinion. So. Is there anyone from the board who has questions for Ben Janke on any of these items?
Yes, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the street lamps, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I see you have the 40,000 budgeted. And when I first saw this on the budget, I thought we were talking the little 18 by 24, go this way to get there. These are very elaborate and really nice. And here's my question. For that amount of money, how many can you put and how far apart are they going to be? And down 77.
Our focus right now, our goal is to change out the street lights along Highway 77 on a 2-block span. We're anticipating to replace about 9 of the street lights. It's not just the expenditure of purchasing the street light itself. As you can see on this example that I attached to, I guess this is the last page. Take a look at this example here. This street light requires underground utilities and underground power connection. So you have to add the cost for bringing underground power to that light pole. That's the reason why installing light fixtures are so expensive. However, we did have an extensive discussion at the last CRA advisory board meeting about this. And to the board, it was very important that they make a positive statement on Highway 77. They do understand they're very expensive, and that's why they decided let's start with 2 city blocks from 8th to 10th Street to make a positive statement. If the community likes it, we can expand it. But it was very important for them to really make the statement.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Aldridge.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree, Ben. I think it's important, the statement that we're making and the things that we're doing. Yeah, it's not on, but now it's on. Okay. It does make a difference to the populace that we're taking care of their city. I think that's of the utmost importance. And it does take a lot of money to do a lot of these projects. But if we don't start and get the ball rolling, I would be more than happy to do 1 or 2 blocks a year over the next 8 years or whatever, but by then, because we all know how fast 8 years goes by, we have new street lights, everything's nice. And so thank you for the hard work.
Absolutely.
Other questions from the board?
Yes, Mayor, for me. On the 100,000 for drainage improvement projects, can you kind of just give us a idea about what you're talking about there? Because I guess I'm questioning a little bit because we have other funds in the stormwater and all of that. So explain to me what you're talking about here, just in the CRA.
The city just received a drainage report for the entire city that identifies the drainage issues that we have. And only for the CRA area, there were certain points, certain streets highlighted where there are some obvious drainage issues, with along with some recommendations how to enhance the drainage capacity of the stormwater system. So since this is a part of the CRA plan, or recommended or mentioned in the CRA plan, to improve the infrastructure within the CRA, I felt it's only appropriate to add a project like this to my project list. I haven't decided on a particular project yet, so that would be the first step, to identify the scope of work, to identify the area that needs improvement and the type of work that needs to be done. It doesn't mean that it has to be a $100,000 project. It could be as easy as hiring a contractor to dig out some ditches, to adjust some of the storm drain inlets so that the stormwater flow is enhanced. So, but this would have to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
I think that's a very fortuitous idea because in reality, not all, but most of the calls that I receive are from some of the older homes in Lynn Haven that are experiencing flooding because just simply of the fact that newer homes have been built nearby and the drainage. So to be able to assist some of these residents that have been here for 40, 50 or more years with their homes and stop some of the flooding issues, if that's possible, that would be wonderful. So I think that's a great idea. Anything else from the board? Questions from Mr. Janke? At this time, does anyone from the public have a question for Mr. Janke about the CRA projects or the budget? Anyone? Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I think you can hear me.
We need you, I'm sorry, but we need you on the microphone because of the fact that this is being streamed live and that people are watching this. We can move the microphone over. Yes, we can. That's perfect. And because this is an informal workshop, Mr. Janke, if you don't have any objection when Mr. Walker has a question, if you could just speak directly to him instead of him having to go through the mayor, because it is an informal
Testing, 1,
time.
2, 3, 4,
Thank you.
5. Okay. I have to agree with Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I agree. We did have a ad hoc meeting there, and due to non-quorum, we had a very, very good discussion where we aired a lot of things and we did discuss and come up with some answers. What we did notice is that since its inception of CRA, since 2002, 2003, we've gone back to square one. Most of the trust fund has been used. Therefore, we're down to, and as we discussed with Ben, a conservative attitude with the budget and with looking at projects. You will notice in this budget that have storefront assistance and the land, the individual home one. Both that and the CRA and the city one have been put in abeyance, so that we don't have to worry about too much. But we will be waiting to start that again. We did discuss drainage and everything. That was good, and we did go through that. But I was looking through the budget, and the budget itself, which is page 72, had a few things on there we did not know and did not see. This was interesting. As you know, the CRA is a separate identity. It pays for its own way. It's under Florida statutes. It has one employee. He is partially, well, I would call a semi-partial employee. He is shared with usage to the city, okay? That's on a 20%, 80% basis. 80% CRA
Mr. Walker,
pays.
if you could just ask the question, what the
Okay.
questions are that you have, because I
Okay.
think the board is pretty much aware of what you're telling us. So if you could just ask the questions, that would be great.
All right, okay.
just
Okay.
for expedience. Thank you.
If you look down there in the line items, you'll see a request for $35,000 for an SUV. And I was trying to explain that we have one employee part-time. I don't understand. Is that vehicle going to be a city vehicle? Is it going to be a CRA vehicle? CRA can own property. Okay, is it going to be licensed as a city vehicle? Therefore, who's going to use it? Is it going to be only for the CRA director?
Mr. Walker, I can answer that question for
Okay.
you. It was actually my idea. I had a discussion with Mr. Janke, and if you've seen the vehicle that he's been using for years, it's going to require a lot of repair. It's going to have a lot of upkeep in the very near future. It's already had some. Also, Mr. Janke, in addition to what he does with CRA, also works as our economic development director. He has to meet with officials from other cities, other counties, with our Rebecca Harden. They often have visitors who come here who he is showing around Lynn Haven. He's taking to various places. And quite frankly, I would be embarrassed for him to use the car that he's been using to try and let people think that Lynn Haven is a place they would want to relocate their business to. And he's been very successful. Right after the storm, he was out and about immediately trying to find out who our businesses were that were viable. He's been working very hard to bring in new business with Becca Harden and others. And so it would be a city vehicle, but it would be, and of course the city manager, the acting city manager, could certainly assign others to use the vehicle if she wanted to. But I suggested to Mr. Janke, based on what he did, every day that I see him doing, that he was asking me about the vehicle, what I thought about it, his car, and to put forth the best face for Lynn Haven. I think that it's in our best interest to have a really nice vehicle for him to show visitors around in and to do his work. So that's the answer to that question.
Mayor, if I may.
Commissioner Russell, yes.
Mr. Walker, I also would like to point out that it's a partnership between the city with the EDA and the CRA. The city does not charge rent, utilities, or anything for the office that Mr. Janke uses when he's acting as the CRA director. So, I mean, it is a partnership between both of us.
I understand that. And it was set up by the mayor and the city manager. And I'll use the titles and office. I don't use names because it's the office that does the program. And it was said to us and told to us and promised to us that this was a field expediency item to save money. Okay, I understand that. However, the fact is CRA bought its office for its officer. And we gave it to the city. And you used it for many years as the office for the CRA, the Planning Commission, and everything. And then finally did what we wanted to do with the CRA, turn it into a parking lot, which it now has a lot of pile of sand on it, but that's okay. I understand the partnership. I understand that. But it's very unique that the CRA is going to own a car, doesn't have a plan for maintenance for it.
Mr. Walker, excuse me, Commissioner Russell, I got into your discussion, but Mr. Walker, I just said to you the city would own the car. Mr. Janke works for the city, as well as he is the director for the CRA. The city will own the car. The city will buy the tag if this commission approves it. That this is not approved yet, but that's the way that would be. Do you have further questions about the budget?
Well, that unique, the city is going to buy it and pay for it and tag it, right?
That's what I've said twice now,
But it appears in the CRA budget.
because it will be driven by the CRA director.
Okay, so it's not being paid for by the CRA.
It is coming out of whichever fund that the city manager sees fit to do. So it may be partially out of one fund or another. And
Okay,
I
all
see
right.
that, I see that, you know.
I see your point, and your clarity is there, good, and I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Do you have other questions? Thank you very, very much. Are there others in the audience who have questions? Mrs. Walker.
Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. A couple of years ago, the commission voted to pay for some of Mr. Yankee's college education. I'm just wondering where on the budget I may find that.
I haven't looked for that particular item, but I will say it's under training according to the city manager. Yes.
So we are paying 6,000 a year for that?
Up to-
Okay,
up to-
originally it was approved at 5,000, so we have upped it to 6,000.
That is correct.
Are there other questions from the public? And I would also point out that the city offers training to all of its employees who are wanting to further their educations, and we certainly encourage, as an educator myself, I encourage education for all of our employees. And there seems, I just want to just clear the air just a little bit. There seems to be always a little bit of some sort of discussion about Mr. Janke's position, that he's partly working for the CRA and partly working for the city, and asking the questions as though maybe there's something that's not quite right, there's something that's not quite clear. I would just defend this employee's performance against any questions that anyone has. And yes, he deserves to have a decent car to drive to represent the city. Yes, he's done an excellent job. I have nothing but the highest praise for Mr. Janke before the storm and after, but particularly after the storm, and helping us to recover. And yes, he does work partly for the CRA, and yes, he does work partly for the city. He does both admirably. And if anyone is has questions that there's something that's not right about what money's being spent here, you're welcome to come in and make an appointment. We can talk further about it. But at this point, I just don't want there to be any question or shadow about the job that this employee does and how much he deserves this vehicle, and also to be able to have the same benefits as other employees, even though he's paid out of two different budgets. Yes, Mrs. Walker, you may certainly address that.
I'm not questioning the value of Ben here in the city. What I'm questioning is whether or not a $35,000 vehicle and college education is even allowed to come out of the CRA funds. Originally, CRA funds, I don't see them mentioning that in the packet of information we received back in 2003. It was outlined, the CRA funds coming from the TIF was outlined to assist the blighted portion of our city. And I don't
understand the history of the CRA, and we've heard the history of it many times.
Right.
It's 2019. That was 16 years ago. If there's something that you feel that has been statutorily done in an incorrect way, please address it to us in writing, and we'll have their attorney
Thank you.
research it,
I
and
will
we'll
take
go
care.
from
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question about this budget? Thank you. Would that bring us to the end of the CRA workshop? Do we have any further business to discuss? Mr. Janke, anything further you wanted to say before we end? Go ahead, please.
I would like to recognize the chairman of our CRA Advisory Board, who is here in the audience today, Mr. James Hans. He has been, spearheading the discussion over the last couple of months, and also Mr. Walker, who is our vice chairman of the CRA Advisory Board. So I would like to thank them publicly for their time and their commitment on serving on this advisory board.
And we agree as well. Does anyone else on the commission have anything else that you would like to say regarding the CRA or the budget before we close this workshop? Thank you. Workshop's over. Now we're